Assalamu alaikum, shalom, peace to everyone. This is a brief introduction before the actual show that is to come up. We're joined with a man named Eric Lovely, who is a real pioneer in the sovereignty movement. And I will warn everyone that the interview is actually a bit advanced. And so what I would suggest is that everybody go watch Bushwack's Slavery by Consent series. It's an excellent series. It's actually, he's in the process of doing it, but I think he's up to part 5 at this moment. And it will give you an introduction, a nice introduction to the concept of the sovereignty movement. And after you watch that, for those of you who really understand how intensely serious this issue is, please come back and listen to this more advanced discussion with this gentleman, Eric Lovely, who's been fighting this fight for over a decade. So, basically just a quick explanation of what the sovereignty movement is about is essentially sort of separating our sentient being, which is our sovereign soul, our sovereign self. No government should rule over us. Only God rules over us. And we are the bosses of governments, essentially, and we set them up as a convenience for ourselves, yes? And somehow, governments, people are power hungry, and they've used governments, of course, to flip that all around and make us the subjects of them, much like a king would with his subjects, correct? So, people think they're living in this democracy, and they get to vote and all these things, and it's really rather comical, and all you have to do is look around the world and see that that's just an illusion, an absolute illusion. So this concept of sovereignty is about us reclaiming our sovereign sentient souls and extricating ourselves from this subjection to governments. And you'll often hear this term called straw man, where they essentially tricked us in a very, very tricky word play, where they've used the court system to make words mean something different than what we all in our common language take them to mean. For instance, the word person. A person does not mean a human being or a sentient soul. In a court of law, a person means a corporation. And as soon as you walk into a courtroom and you admit yourself to be a corporation, because that's how they look at you, and in fact that's the only way that they can have control over you, is if they trick you into referring to yourself as a person, as this straw man, as this fictitious entity, as this corporate entity that is a franchise of your government, which is also a corporation. This is the only way they can take control of us. And this is how they put this on our birth certificates. They put this on Social Security cards. They put this on your driver's license. Every time we go and apply or register or plead or anything to the government, we are essentially playing with this straw man entity. And this is really a dangerous, dangerous game. Now, I would like to say that because this contract, essentially it's a contract between us and the government, and we just fell asleep, and we were not alert enough, and we fell into this trick where they literally, if you look on the back of your Social Security number, Social Security cards, those numbers on the back of Social Security cards are linked to dollar bills. We are now the collateral. They already own all the land in their mind. I won't say in actuality, but in their mind, they own all the land already, the banks. And now there's nothing left to go after except the people. So that's what they've done. They've created this system where they can actually use us as chattel. We are their goods. We are their property in their minds. And we've unwittingly played into this whole system. So it's imperative that we extricate ourselves from this. This is the peaceful solution to this world enslavement. And if you think we aren't enslaved, just bear in mind that 92% of all Americans are bankrupt by the age of 62. How do you work your entire life and end up bankrupt at the end of it? Because we all fell asleep and we weren't paying attention. But fortunately, we've got people like Eric Lovely and others that are paving the way to teach us how to extricate ourselves, regain our sovereignty. We become the boss again. We are the lawmakers. We are the boss, and we must begin behaving like this if we want to hand down any kind of future to our posterity. This is absolutely imperative. Absolutely imperative. So, again, I would urge everyone to go watch Bushwack's Slavery by Consent, because we have indeed unwittingly consented to this. We must actively opt out of this. We must actively opt out of this, or get ready for China to microchip us all, and we are the collateral. And all you have to do is, if you could get your original birth certificate and look down the back of it, you would see stamps from banks all over the world as we have been traded as securities. I'm not even kidding. It's that sickening. It's that sickening. There are some sick minds that look at us as property. And if we don't do something about it, it's going to get far, far worse than we could ever imagine. So, go watch that series. And for those of you who want to know more, want to go a little deeper into down that rabbit hole and understand this and figure out how do we actually rewrite this earth, how do we overtake this system and re-implement a sensible, sound, fair system for all of humanity, come back and listen to this interview. And I will also give some resources at the end of the interview to guide you even further. So with that, yeah. Let's pull together and get our earth back on track, inshallah. Okay.
The world destruction, your life ain't nothing. The human race is becoming a disgrace. The rich get richer, the poor are getting poorer. Fascist, chauvinistic government fools. Yes, the world is headed for destruction. You and I know it. The Bible tells you. If we don't stop to look for a better life, the world will be destroyed in the time zone. In the time zone. In the time zone. In the time zone.
Assalamu alaikum, shalom, peace to everyone. Welcome to another edition of Wake Up Project Radio. We're joined on the line with Eric Lovely, and perhaps many of you have never heard of Eric Lovely, but he is who I would consider a key component in the personal sovereignty movement, which is gaining more and more momentum. More and more people are talking about this issue, rightfully so, as we realize something is terribly wrong. People are feeling more and more trapped in a system that they don't understand, sort of a boiled frog effect. How did we get to where we are? How come we are all in debt? We're all struggling, there's misery and poverty all over the earth. How did we get here, and how do we get out? And I think that's what the whole personal sovereignty movement is about. You're going to hear a lot more about it. So the goal of this interview is to build just a foundational understanding of how we got to where we are, and also discuss, the probable remedy. How do we get out of this trick? And so I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Eric Lovely. Eric, you're there?
Yes, ma'am, I am here.
Okay. So Eric, again, you've probably never heard of Eric, but he has been fighting the good fight for the personal sovereignty movement for how many years now, Eric?
Well, to be exact would be difficult, but it has been well over a decade. And on into the 17-year mark where I started to develop an understanding of the system, basically because as I was born and I went out into the world, and everything was taught to me, except for my grandfather was a little different, but everything the system taught to me, is all of these steps. And at the end of this steps, there's this beautiful pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And when it wasn't there, and it didn't make any sense, that's when I started to look at the system and say, well, there's some major problems here. And that's what really started me down the journey. But I'd have to say I've actually been doing legal actions and things of that nature for a little over a decade.
Okay. So I like to say Eric is on the bleeding edge of this. And I was listening, he does a radio show on Freedomizer Radio on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday evenings, where you can actually call in and ask him questions, which is just a wonderful resource. But he was saying, in the beginning, he suffered some real some kind of torment from, the people that didn't understand what he was doing, didn't understand that he was actually fighting for his own freedom, as a human being, as a sovereign soul or sentient soul, extricating himself from this manipulative system that we're all entrapped in. And you want to talk a little bit about that? Some of the things you went through from let's just say the ignorance of people didn't understand what you were attempting to do and trying to do?
Well, it gets a little difficult because some people even get upset by the information when they see people of faiths, of different creators that they believe in,